Welcome to Cast Dice, the podcast that explores the great big wild world of tabletop gaming that exists today. My name is Brad, and this is a podcast that explores the idea that we are in the middle of a gaming renaissance. There are just too many good games out there for us to spend our hobby time and our hobby dollars on these days. It can be really intimidating sometimes to figure out what to play next, and that's kind of one of the things we're going to be talking about today. Now, this podcast explores, as I said, the great big wild world of tabletop gaming. That often involves the events that we go to play in, big industry events and announcements that are going on, and cool games and miniatures that my guests and I have enjoyed either playing or collecting. And today we have a special guest on, a gentleman whose work I have been enjoying a ton. Now, you may think, that company sounds familiar, but that is because we spoke, of course, to Andy Hobday of Footsore UK a couple weeks ago. And now we are going to speak to another Footsore North America, the man himself. And of course, I'm talking about Tim Spakowski. Tim, welcome to Cast Dice. How you doing, man?
I'm great. How are you doing, Brad?
I'm great. And of course, when we're talking about the other things, if you know this man's dulcet tones, you would also know that he is the voice behind the Footsore Box, the brand new podcast by Footsore Miniatures. So, Tim, welcome to the show, man. How things are good?
Things are really good. Things are really extremely busy, and I'm really grateful to be on the show and
Thank you for
talk
coming
to
on.
you. I really enjoy what you do for the community, and in many formats, with the pictures that you post, the stuff that you're working on painting, as well as your podcast. So I think it's great.
Thanks, man. It's not often one of the things that people say to me on the show. You've actually got me flat-footed and blushing. I just think that there's a lot of wonderful games and wonderful miniatures out there that often don't get the publicity that, they may need or deserve. And, some of the games that I talk about, of course, are mass-produced, big ticket games that are very shiny and cool that are put out by mass companies, some of which I used to work for. I get it. But I also like to talk about some of the games put out by, smaller independent companies and, authors who I think, deserve some airtime because their stuff is great. Now, I did mention earlier that I'm really enjoying your work. And in particular, out of Footsore North America, you guys have been putting out some really fantastic modern pulp adventure kind of models that, really sing to me as a collector that I have been picking up and really enjoying. So, there's a lot of questions in there, but what sort of brought you to the sort of modern wargaming pulp range, sort of as a collector and as a passion that sort of got you to have these pieces commissioned and really went out to, not just have them made for yourself, but then manufacturing them for others?
I think the biggest or the best answer is my childhood. We all grew up with different things in our lives, and that hopefully have stuck with us in a positive way. Well, the negative stuff we learned from, but so there's things that make your heart sing. And when I grew up with in the 80s. So that means all the 80s. We've got Star Wars and all the other cool stuff that was around, and there's also adventurers and military comics and cartoons and toys all wrapped around that. So I saw a hole that I think needs to be filled for pulp gaming.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
in modern pulp gaming. And when I say pulp, it's my definition of pulp is it's a skirmish game, but there's also a story driven behind it as well as some role playing. It's not just you're moving 10 pieces, he's moving 10 pieces, you roll dice, crap, I lost 4 of them. That sort of thing. That's to me, I've moved away from that. I like more of the let's bring some story, let's bring some life onto the table, and why not do it with Pulp Gaming? I think that there's one of my favorites is Pulp Alley.
Yes.
And I work with Dave and working on some figures from Captain Spectre.
Yes.
And so we're working on that, and I love that 30s, 20s, 40s pulp era.
And that's
so
like that's almost a sort of the rocket soldier sort of genre, which is awesome to see. Masked rocket soldier, fighting against other rocket equipped bad guys. It's that whole rocket age thing. I mean, of course, you can talk about certain movies that fill that void, but I mean, that is a comic genre from that time period. Radio show. I mean, it's great.
Well, the thing about radio shows and pulp is that the only thing that you were left to was your imagination.
Right.
You had, kids these days, unfortunately, are playing with other people's imaginations.
Yeah.
Meaning the video games. And I played video games. I mean, I was talking to my 12-year-old today about when Zelda first came out with Nintendo and that sort of thing. But, back in those times, you just had the radio, or you had a pulp, book or a comic, or, if you're lucky. So you're left with the pictures in your head matching the voice that's coming across the speaker, and you get excited and you just want to play it. And we did the same thing as kids. I remember, I joke, but it's the God's honest truth. I remember my grandma taking me to see Empire Strikes Back. And right next door to the theater was a toy store called Children's Palace. And I wanted to go over there and find Han Solo and the new figures. And she takes me to the store. I'm all excited. She says, "Okay, here's $1."
Yeah, that's not going to cut it. Even then.
I can't even get, so, but that sort of thing, what I try to do is bring that feeling of childhood back into, I think you and I are close to the same age. And, that to me is what is important. I still feel like I'm 11 or 12. I honestly say this, that I have to remind myself that I am 46.
Yeah.
I have to remind myself that I'm a daddy because I don't feel like it. Yeah. Yes, definitely I've matured, and some people would say that I have digressed. But
yes.
And I just say, well, I'm just, a kid, but just with a bigger allowance. And what I love about, and I didn't even realize I was doing this before I got into the whole miniature business, is that you have a picture in your head, and now you're wanting to put that on the table.
Yeah.
And for me, the most important thing is when I grew up, like I said, in the 80s, there was no internet available to us. We were lucky if we had a walkie-talkie that could reach 2 houses down.
Yeah.
But what I did have were models for, Tamiya, SC, then there's Verlinden, VLS, Verlinden Letterman stock that was close to my mom's house. But I had books like from Shepard Payne. I had all these books that I would study and read. I still have this upstairs in my living room, Model Soldiers in Color. It's a hardback.
Oh yeah.
I mean, the amount of I just get goosebumps actually just now talking about it. The amount of time studying that and imagining and so I kind of see it not from an ego perspective, but for me it's like this is an opportunity to leave a mark on the hobby and give back.
Yeah.
All with the purpose of inspiring gamers, new and old, to play.
Yeah.
That's it. That's what all of this is about. And that's what I love about making miniatures. And I've learned a lot in these last few years, a lot, what to do, what not to do, how to do it, that sort of thing. And you know what? I'm still learning. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I don't know what I'm doing.
Trial and error.
Yeah, trial and error. But I think the most important thing is I'm having fun doing it.
Amen.
And in the end, it's to provide these cool figures to the gamer so that they can play and then bring up the next generation.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Well, I love, you've said a lot of things in there that I want to kind of add on to. But one of the things is a lot of the gaming that we see today, and there are more games than ever, and the games that are out are better than ever. There are just so many good games. It's almost as though someone has a podcast about it, he says, rolling his eyes. Hey, hi, thank you for listening. But a lot of the games that we play today, I mean, a lot of them in recent years, I should say, have been tied to specific IP. Now, if you go back far enough, back before the Dungeons and Dragons world was an IP, it was just generic fantasy role playing, and then you had the original Warhammer, which was made to play, battles using generic fantasy, tropes. You have Star Frontiers, which was kind of like, generic.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, yes, to a degree, there was a background there, but you could adapt it. I mean, what I'm getting at is today you have here's a Star Wars game, here's a Judge Dredd game, here's a, whatever else, World War II game, and it's all very specific, BattleTech. I mean, whereas we're seeing a rise in miniature agnostic games like Reality's Edge, games like 7TV, Pulp Alley, where you can come up with your own. It's sort of an open sandbox experience where you're able to really explore your own narrative. And I think that's really exciting. And what I love about the models that you're putting out, be it, some Vietnam veteran, in the field, LARP models, or if you're talking about, a modern ninja or a saboteur or a dog handler with a very cool dog attached, several versions, I might add. If you're talking about those, or you're talking about, a family of adventurers, of which children are a part, which we don't always see on tabletop games, there are, you have a wide spectrum of models that people can draw from and add to their collections to help play out the narratives that they want to play out in these games that are now available. It's really exciting. It's cool.
Yeah. Thank you. A lot of people, they ask me, well, do you have a set of rules?
Yeah.
Or what rules can I play these with? And I say, well, these are 28 millimeter miniatures.
Mm-hmm.
They're rules agnostic.
Exactly.
That doesn't mean that Footsore isn't working on a set of modern, or it wouldn't mean that I, don't work close with David Phipps from Pulp Alley.
Mm-hmm.
When I came out with Timmy's Journey, he created cards to go with, for Pulp Alley. But again, it's because, again, like you said, these rules, there's so many different rules. Some people may like a particular rule set. I mean, like a particular. And what's great about it is you can take these miniatures and play them in any set. You can play them in.
Yeah, which is great. I mean, it's. I talk a lot about miniature agnostic rule sets all the time, but as you say, it's nice to have some rules agnostic miniatures. And I know there are lots of little boutique companies that sell, little ranges of this, that, and the other thing, some of which is licensed, some of which is, not. And I'm not saying that Etsy's full of those. But, not looking at Masters of Universe models that I may have just gotten in the mail. Anyway, I'm sorry, the suspiciously strong 80s muscle fantasy sci-fi models I got in the mail. Anyway, but it's really fun that we're able to explore elements of our childhood that we're getting to revisit. Because again, a lot of my childhood was spent. I had an hour and a half commute to school for a good chunk of my childhood. And that was when I was living in Japan, and that was all sitting on trains. Now, don't get me wrong, a big chunk of that time I was rocking out to the old school tape Walkman that I just got, and that is partially why I am a diehard 80s fan. But I spent a huge amount of that time reading rule sets, reading science fiction books, and just doodling and sketching in notebooks because, there was literally nothing else I could do. It wasn't like I was going to do homework.
Right.
But it's an exciting time, and I guess I'm really excited that you're part of that.
Well, thank you. Well, it's interesting that, and I hear a lot of people refer to, it was great when it was, in my childhood this and in my childhood that. I look at people and I say, well, what the heck do you mean?
Yeah.
Why can you not have those great memories now?
Yep.
And I think what happens is life happens. And it just depends upon how you react to life happening. And that changes your perspective on things. And then we're only here for so long. So let's just have fun and play and enjoy everyone and help inspire people. That's the biggest thing. That's the biggest thing.
Yeah. Look, I've had a couple people ask me recently if I want to come play the player pack for Australia's largest convention for Bolt Action just went up, and I know Age of Sigmar is crazy huge. Of course, I'm talking about CanCon, and a lot of people are asking me if I want to go up and join them this year. And I haven't played a CanCon in a number of years because I played competitively for a long time, and a lot of people, when they talk about their gaming history, talk about how, as a teenager, late high school, and, when they were in university, they found alcohol and women or men or whatever, and, had other pursuits that they were very excited about. And gaming took the side, and then maybe after they've had a couple kids or a child, or, they've found a job, all of a sudden they need something else to do, and they go back to the thing they loved before. I never stopped playing games. I played straight through, but along the way, gaming stopped being fun. It became something I did. I played competitively, and I played at the top tier. I was at one point rated Australia's and Asia's #1 40K player for a while. And I'm not saying that to toot my own horn. In fact, I'm kind of embarrassed about it. What I am saying, though, is I traveled a lot for tournaments, and I spent an ungodly amount of money on miniatures, on paying other people to paint my miniatures, because, you had to follow the meta curve. And Games Workshop did have severe codex creep at the time. Right. And so it was staying ahead of the curve. I would paint one army, and I'd pay someone to paint another army, and then I'd sell one of the other armies. And it was just this never ending cycle, but it stopped actually being fun. And it became a massive stress, and I stopped being able to actually enjoy gaming. And it wasn't until, even when I went to Bolt Action, I came in, with the LRDG guys, and, that was very much a competitive closed circuit arms race where we were constantly playing against one another. Don't get me wrong. That was fun. I had a great time with those guys. But I started to take that too seriously. And so I've sort of taken a massive step back from everything competitive. And it was at that exact moment that all of a sudden I found a million other games. Even, I went from basically 40K to fantasy to Bolt Action. But, I was one game at one time, one focus, had to be that. And it was lived and breathed that game. And when I got to my 10th Bolt Action painted army, and, it was ridiculous what I was up to, it just went, what am I doing?
Right.
And really finding these games, these smaller games, and digging into them, and just having fun with the narrative and not worrying about whether I'm winning or losing, but what's happening on the tabletop. It took me a long time to come to grips with, but it was a bit of an epiphany, and I'm hesitant to go back to big 2-day events, not because, everyone who plays in them is a dick. Hardly. Not even, I'm not saying that at all. Most aren't. I'm more worried about myself at that event. And I think it's just, sorry, I'm on a soapbox on your show. Let me step off of that. But it's the idea that we can have fun with the games. And when I kind of went through my quote unquote regression, I think is what you were talking about before, about, maturing and then maybe immaturing. It was revisiting the IPs of my childhood, be it be
Right.
it G.I. Joe, Transformers, countless Japanese giant robot genre
Sure.
games, but it was that fun, and it brought the fun back. And I'm glad that more and more games are allowing us to do that. And, sure, the competitive is still out there. In fact, it's probably stronger than ever. I'm just glad I'm not a part of it. I don't know.
Well, see, yeah, I mean, yeah,
there's a lot there.
There's a lot there. I was very fortunate because when my dad got me into gaming when I was 4, and literally he would paint plastic Airfix and NPC figures, Civil War and World War One, and I would stand right next to him in the basement and watch him paint. And he had a buddy or a couple buddies. They made their own Civil War rule set, and they based these figures on cardboard. Nice. And they made, like I said, and so they gamed. So I was 4. I was not even in preschool, but those are my earliest memories of standing there. I remember standing standing or sitting in his painting area, which was in the basement. It was close to the furnace and stuff. Part of my childhood, my mind was, I was imagining I was on the Starship Enterprise. And it was just the coolest thing. When I was 15, a store moved close to within walking distance of my mom's house called Epic Gallery, and the owner, Mike Brown, at the time he was there, and that's where I spent a great part of my teenage years. I got into D&D when I was 8 because my parents divorced, and when I'd go on the weekends with my dad, there was an older kid that lived across the street from my grandma's who got me into D&D. And then my father also played SPI and Avalon Hill board games.
Oh, yeah.
And my first board game was Tactics 2. And Panzer
That's a
Leader.
hell of a board game to start with.
That's right. Well, the way you train in peace, buddy, is how you fight in war.
Yes.
So it was always there. And then, and not to mention my childhood friend since kindergarten, he and I would play toy soldiers, and he had a pool table, and we had made sandboxes, and we were always playing. Yeah. We used to get on our bikes and take trash can lids and broom handles and joust.
Nice.
We were it's crazy how none of us got seriously injured.
Yes.
Or blown off fingers from fireworks, throwing them at trenches during winter fights and stuff. But I was always playing, always playing. And like I said, when I was 15, the store moved close to my mom's house. And that's where I met a lot of the gamers that I'm still playing with today.
Nice, yeah.
So these guys are in their 70s. Several of them have passed. I have been very fortunate to have been on the receiving end of 30 years of gaming from a mentor of mine named William Narden. He was pretty big in the community, and there's other people that are saying, "Okay, Tim, here, I just keep buying more stuff for you because you're going to get it all." So, but when I grew up, when I was being raised in it, these men were the age that I am today.
Yeah,
in their 40s, early 40s, mid 40s. None of that competitive stuff was there. Yes, people are competitive, but no tournament players. Right. You know, and I was there the first day when 40K, when the Space Marine plastic box set was put on the shelf. I was there. I played 2nd edition Warhammer, but I also knew that there was that group that really were power gamers, or that were those tournament gamers. And I didn't have nothing to do with them because they brought so much attitude to the table. Yeah. And the only time they brought that attitude, or would be like that, is on the gaming table. They would dare not be like that off the table. Whereas I've also been in martial arts since I was 8, so I had that background as well. So so to end this part is that I really don't want to have anything to do with that type of gaming.
Yeah, exactly.
Tournaments, it brings out the ultra competitiveness from people. It brings out a lot of other things that people haven't worked on themselves, and they bring it to the table, and they just can ruin it for other people. So that's I don't have any of that. I don't care. I don't care if I win or lose. I just want to play. They're just the reminder of this is why I'm doing this, is sitting down and having fun and playing.
Yeah. I've seen it both ways, especially having been a competitive gamer probably more than I have a narrative gamer. If you look at my gaming life as a wide spectrum or a timeline, but I mean, it is an opportunity to get out and get games with new people, see new armies, try new things, and it can be really invigorating. Keep games fresh and keep things moving as far as your love of a game, and as far as inspiring you to do more. But I don't, and again, I'm not throwing necessarily shade at all people who play in tournaments. In fact, I'm not throwing shade at most, if not almost everyone who plays. I don't know if I trust myself. I'm too much of my mom's son at times. That must. It's not even like I must win, but I feel like I have to put my best foot forward. And I mean, I won a very large Australian tournament, in fact, the largest in the Southern Hemisphere, and won Best Sports in the same time. So it's not like I feel like I was steamrolling people, but I did not enjoy the experience as it went on, because it became, I started worrying about that. Whereas when I went in that first time, and a lot of the first times before that, it was just like, I'm here to play some games and have some fun. And then it was like, I found success. Ooh, can I go back? Ooh, I have a name to represent or something. And these are you don't necessarily admit to that out loud, but in your head, you're like, ooh, I've done really well in the past. Oh, am I a has-been? And you go, we're talking about toy soldiers. Move on. Anyway, speaking of moving on, let's move on and talk about something very exciting. Now, you guys have started your own podcast. Now, by you guys, I mean specifically you are running the Footsore Box podcast. Now, there's a lot to that. So I'm going to let you intro your own show and talk about what it is that you guys are going to be talking about. Because I know a lot of people have been really interested, for example, about Mortal Gods and wanting me to have Andy on to talk about it. And now, of course, I have you on to talk about these games as well. How can they find out more about the podcast that talks specifically about Footsore Miniatures?
So the podcast itself is called Footsore Box. Mm-hmm. We have a Facebook group titled Footsore Box.
Yep.
You can also find that on the Footsore Facebook business page. Mm-hmm. We are on iTunes, and I also post to Libsyn. So those are the two places. When I first was doing the research for podcasts, again, I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I'm just trying to figure out a way to trying to get something recorded. And I realized that there was all these places to put stuff up. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to put it on iTunes. It's on Libsyn. I will do my best to get the link up and make it available to everybody. I'm very, very, very grateful, and I see myself as very fortunate to be partnered with Footsore and Andy and Mark. They have been extremely wonderful, and all of their support with me and of me, and for them to say, right, here's this Yank, he's ready. We're going to put our name behind him and have him move forward on this side. That's quite an honor.
Yes.
And life is very interesting, and you put stuff out there and it comes, and those two guys were there, and it's just a great relationship. So we decided that, we've been talking about it for a while, to have Footsore TV and Footsore Box. It's been a little bit slow getting things moving because we've been quite busy. But the idea behind Footsore Box, we do our best to put at least one episode out a week, sometimes two, to talk about different products that Footsore itself produces. For example, Mortal Gods. So I think it's very important, and to be honest with everyone here, that period, the ancient period, I know very, very little of. And one of the podcasts I was joking with Andy and Mark, is that I remember as I was a kid watching Time Bandits, when they were dropped into Greece with the Minotaur. That was that and Clash of the Titans.
Yes.
So I didn't, but it just, I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. But as a young adult and as an adult now, I didn't really get into it. So I've been learning about those periods. And I thought, I can't be the only guy here not really knowing what the heck's going on, or how I build armies, how I paint them, that sort of thing. So why don't we talk about in different segments of the show the different classes, the different factions, the history behind Mortal Gods, and how the heck do you paint these things?
Yes.
What kind of weapons do they have? Why aren't they all white? Because as a kid in Hollywood, all these guys walking around are wearing tunics or whatever, or they're all white. It's just, so for me, it's to educate the gamer. And we don't have all the answers, of course, but at least we've got some answers to back up the factions in the products that we're putting out, so that you could apply that knowledge to the game itself.
Yes.
So
and
we're going to be
it starts the conversation. It doesn't end it.
Starts it, right?
Yeah.
And the most important thing from those conversations is the feedback from the gamers themselves, so that the gamers, they leave comments and say, okay, what about this? What about this? What about this? We listen. We read those comments and we bring them in to the next show.
Yeah.
So we're going to be doing the same thing for Gangs of Rome. We talked a little bit about the modern stuff, the modern range, Footsore Modern, and we're going to be talking about Mythic and all sorts of different periods. That when you look at what Footsore has produced in the past and the direction that we're going, that's where you can see where a lot of the episodes will be about. The biggest thing is the support of the community. I see we don't want to be a company that just puts out a set of rules and miniatures and go, here you go. Yes. We want to support the gamers, and that's very important.
Yeah.
We may not get everything right the first time, but we do our best to do that, provide that for the community.
Well, that's the thing. And I think that's really important, especially for maybe smaller gaming companies, is interacting with your customer base. So you keep abreast of what they want, and you're giving them things that are exciting and, help them to play the games that you're producing. But it's also, I think it's important for all companies. I know a lot of big companies put out a game and then sort of say, well, here you go, have fun with it. And then, traditionally they've just sort of turned off the phones and said, put their fingers in their ears and gone la 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 figuratively, while people maybe struggle through things that maybe weren't right the first time. And it's really exciting how much you guys are interacting with your customer base, because nobody gets it right the first time. I mean, that's why we have FAQs. That's why we have rule changes. That's why we have point adjustments. So many games adjust on the fly. Games these days are often seen as sort of living documents. And the fact that you guys are working with your audience and you're answering questions and you're providing resources is just fantastic. It's cool.
Well, I'm glad you think so. That's the whole idea. I when I first got into the miniature business of making my first miniatures, I had the impression that a lot of the companies were kind of like the Oz. They were standing behind the curtain and not really showing themselves, or it was different. And I think it's important to be there and put a face and a voice and a name, so that people get to know that, in the end, I'm just a gamer. That's it.
Yep.
I am just a gamer in the end. I just want the same thing that you guys want. Just in the end is pushing toy soldiers.
That's right.
And rolling dice, making good memories with your friends. And that's it. And then ready for the next toy to come out and get excited. And because, my God, nowadays it's Christmas morning every day.
Yes.
And every day. And that's exciting.
Yeah.
But it can also be quite confusing, because you talk about the different games and different periods, and you like, oh, okay, you know what? I got to focus. I have to stop. I'll let my other buddies get into this game. I can't do that because I will not have the time to paint the figures because I have other goals.
Yeah. Well, you also have a family, a job. There's other things to do in the day. That...
Well, I pretty much do this full time. Yeah. So this is, and I'm fortunate. I don't really have to do this, and I do this because, it's just a passion.
Out of love, man. Out of love.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about the future then. You have mentioned, things that are coming down the pipe and how every day is Christmas. And I guess that sort of makes me wonder what's coming from Footsore. Now, I'm extraordinarily excited about Mythos for Mortal Gods, which is, the mythic creatures and armies and war bands and monsters that's coming out later this year. And I keep thinking, later this year, that's really far away. It's almost October.
I know.
Oh my God. How did that happen? So I think that's going to be on us really fast. But what's coming in the pipe? What teasers can you throw our way? Because I know a lot of people are very excited about A, Footsore Miniatures, and B, some of the stuff that Footsore North America is doing in particular.
Well, definitely you mentioned Mythic. That is towards the end of this year. Nice. And I don't know if you've seen, I'm sure you have seen some of the demo games and the pictures that Andy and Mark have put out.
That Cyclops. Ooh.
Yeah, the Cyclops, and there's a Hydra and all this beautiful, beautiful figures. That is something that I'm very interested in because God bless them. They have sculptors who are back in the age of the 80s, late 80s, 90s Games Workshop that's bringing back that feel of Old Hammer.
So cool.
That we had when we were playing, in the very beginning. So that is what I'm definitely excited for. So I can't divulge all the stuff, but that's definitely coming out.
Especially, you were talking about Clash of the Titans. That is literally the game where if you loved those movies growing up, and I'm not talking about the modern ones, although I think that works too. Especially that first one. Gives me shivers.
I know. I remember as a kid being scared to death of Medusa. But even go back further than that was Jason and the Argonauts.
Yes.
We've got good, there's really good skeletons out now.
Yes.
And there's other stuff coming out that will accompany those. So I can talk about that. Right now from the Footsore North America side. So what I'm kind of really handling the moderns and the pulp stuff, and I'm getting into the other things as well. But the biggest thing right now is the Vietnam era.
Yes.
And there's a couple companies that are doing really, really good jobs at producing a lot of miniatures for that genre. So I didn't want to do that again. I wanted to put out some small units, some small special forces units, and we've done a set of LERPs. We've done SEALs. We've got another set coming out towards the end of the year from Vietnam.
Cool.
We have that is currently being sculpted and should be done by the end of this week is a set of British SBS in Syria.
Nice.
And that's going to come with a dog and different heads, multiple heads. They're all rocking just baseball caps and low profile rigs, short sleeve shirts, and that sort of thing. But that opens up other areas for us as well in that conflict for the other special forces, the operators that were there. So that will definitely take us towards the end of the year. And like you said, you think, my God, it's the end of the year. Well, yeah, it's September. Christmas is here in 3 months.
Yeah.
And I am welcoming December.
Yeah, exactly.
I will take off probably about 3 or 4 weeks with the whole of December and not do my best not to produce anything and take that time just to sit and paint and build so that I can recharge and rejuvenate. so for the
Yes.
next year, and we've got some stuff coming up that are already. We're gonna be doing Footsore North America is going to be doing a Kickstarter. Well, actually, it's coming out of here, but Footsore itself will be doing a Kickstarter that my mate Glenn and I are going to be running, and we're very excited about that. Mm-hmm. So I know I didn't answer all your questions, but I can't.
No, you've given us more than enough. Yeah, I mean, when I worked for Games Workshop in sales for years. September 1st began Christmas season, and we started putting Christmas decorations up September 1st. And It wasn't that, it was just to get people in the mindset, because, of course, we had to talk to the shops, get them their Christmas product. And, of course, people would put on massive Christmas orders. And then, we'd have to pack it. Then we'd have to ship it. And so by the time it actually got to them, you had to get it out in enough time, because parents literally need months or spouses or even gamers need months to go and buy presents, and you want to make sure you're there for the early bird. And sometimes people are like, oh, the product isn't selling, it's the first week out, and you're like, well, it's the first week of October. Give it a couple weeks. And then they call up late November going, oh my God, I need to reorder so much stuff. And you go, yes, welcome to Christmas. And then, you get to literally, because, we would be shipping stuff, almost Christmas Eve, if not Christmas Eve. Then, literally, then you would have the shops needing to restock everything that they were sold out. And so, sometimes that break didn't come till literally late January. So you said you're taking December off.
Yeah.
Good luck with that.
When I say taking December off,
yeah,
I mean taking December off from starting any new projects.
Right. Yeah.
That's what I mean.
Sorry, I was just being cheeky.
No, not from the sales perspective. It's just from, what can I build next? Yeah, that sort of, yep. That's what I meant.
Yeah. No, I'm sorry. I was being a jerk. Yeah, I do want to say, we have been talking a lot about how a lot of the, particularly the modern stuff for Footsore North America is small batch. The LERP team. You have a samurai, character model, which is very cool. But it's sort of a one-off. You also have, various modern adventures and that adventuring family that I mentioned before. If you take all of those and you go, well, Brad, I only play the big games. I only play army-specific games. Why would I look at these? Well, as Tim was saying, there are a lot of companies that make great Vietnam ranges. And if you happen to be building one, it is definitely worth adding these models to that, because they have a lot of character, and they're great personality models that you can put in to add variance and differentiation within your force, so you don't have the same 10 sculpts over and over again. And they look great. And so that just couldn't let you go today without mentioning that. That I think that I have a lot of weird samurai models from all over the place. And I went out and got yours because I thought it would be a great character piece to add to my existing models. So, yeah. And, of course, I may have gone down the rabbit hole of getting your LERPs and now starting to look at Vietnam models.
Yeah.
So it goes both
really,
ways.
really nice.
Yeah, they are.
The LERPs are really nice. And I've never painted tiger stripes before, so I'm slowly going at learning how to paint tiger stripes so I can take good photos of the figures. Yeah. That's a challenge.
Yeah, it's not easy. I've tried that a couple times, and I have not posted those pictures online. But yes, that is out of my wheelhouse. Right on. Well, Tim, thank you so much for coming on today. It's just been absolutely fantastic talking shop with you. I know I probably had a little too much coffee and have been contributing to your show a bit too much. But it's just been wonderful to talk gaming and industry in general with you. I know that you do need to roll out, but before you do you want to mention anything else other than maybe where people can find you again, just so they definitely can? Anything else you want to talk about? Because we do have time.
Well, I for me, the most important thing is to let everyone know that how grateful I am. I'm very grateful that people have chosen to support me and support support Footsore. Seeing that response is what fuels me and says, okay, right, I'm doing something right here. I'll continue to move forward with this. Mm-hmm. So thank you, community. That's very important. If you want to find me, for the whole idea behind Footsore North America is so that we can support, build, mold, and cast Footsore miniatures here in the United States, and take care of the gaming shops, as well as in North America, as well as Canada. Mm-hmm. So you can find me at footsorenorthamerica.com. We have the Footsore Facebook group. Mm-hmm. We have Footsore Box. We also have Footsore Modern, which is the modern range of figures that Footsore produces. So you can find me there. On Facebook, you can always message me at Tim Spakowski. I'm there. I may not answer you right away, but I will do my best to get back to you as soon as I can. So, the biggest thing is really it's the gratitude, because if I didn't have that, then I wouldn't be doing this today.
Well, I mean, as you say, you are very busy. I didn't even know that the Footsore Modern page existed. I literally just liked it while we were talking. Oh, of course. And there are your SBS in Syria models. Fantastic. Yeah. So, mate, you have your finger in a lot of pies. And again, thank you for putting your fingers out into those pies, because a lot of really exciting models and content for the gaming community has come about because you decided to do that. And that I think should be... we should draw a giant underline under that and say thank you, because it is cool to, without people like you whose passion creates these projects, we wouldn't have them. So thank you. My gaming collection thanks you, although my wallet does not.
Well, again, I appreciate it. It's great. And I am very excited for the new projects that are going to be coming out in the next year, and continuing to help gamers and bring joy to the gaming again.
Amen. Well, guys, speaking of thanking folks, thank you for listening to Cast Ice. It has been a crazy old year, and you might say, Brad, the year isn't over yet. We literally just talked about it being months to go. But Cast Ice began on Halloween 2 years ago. And we are creeping up on our second year birthday. I do have some fun stuff in the old pipe for that, I hope. And I just want to say thank you for listening. Thank you for engaging. I don't like talking numbers. I always get funny when people do that. I think it doesn't make for the most interesting listening when people do it on other podcasts. But... guys, 1,000 people now follow Cast Ice on Facebook. I hadn't been looking. I was blown away. I'm beyond humbled that people, I'm sure a lot of people are just tuning in for bad memes, but thank you for tuning in for bad memes. There you go. So, guys, thank you. Especially given that Cast Ice will be exploring video. I'm hoping that by the time this goes to air, our first YouTube gaming clip will be up, and I'm also hoping that more will follow after that. For those who have been along for the ride, and I know a few people have been listening since the early days of the LRDG, when the audio was just about unlistenable, we've come a long way, baby. I know it's not 100% now. It never will be. I'm a bit of a perfectionist. But I do want to say thank you for listening to this podcast, which is essentially just a hobby of mine. But also, thank you so much. And please bear with us while I get the video part of this up and running. I'm hoping that the learning curve, though incredibly sharp, will be traversed quickly, and we will have great content for you to enjoy. If you have feedback about the games you would like to see or feedback if you are technologically savvy and say, hey, I know what dial you need to turn to make that look better. I will happily take any feedback that you have. Please go to Cast Dice on Facebook. That's CASTDICE, and shoot me a message. I would love any feedback that you have specifically about the new video series or audio or anything else. Thank you very much for listening. As always, it has been a pleasure talking to my guest. Thank you for coming on, Tim.
Thanks for having me.
And when you are playing the games that we know and love, to quote my good buddy Casey, I hope that your dice roll hot. I hope your beverages are cold. But more than anything else, we hope that you are having fun. Good night.
Another day rise in Paraguayan sun. The fuel cracks open. Another Heineken. He's all alone. He's in his little room. He's all alone with a Burmese python and a loaded His friends are gone, and that track